researches and the capacity building programs, and also cooperations. So, and this is, and ladies and gentlemen, this is what we have done and what we are doing, and also we will do in future. So by this opportunity, I would like to thank the great support from IMO, and in particular Dr. Juice. Dr. Juice is actually one of the very important people initiated this MTCC program, and also the stakeholders, partners from the Asian countries over the years. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Juice. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Ruan, and it was good to hear from both MTCCs what they do in the respective regions. And we have other three who are not here, but at least gives an idea what capacities that you have and what your plans are. Let's move on to the next speaker now, and the panelist, Ms. Ingrid Gogh from Global Maritime Forum. She's a project director. Ingrid, over to you.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Jose, for the introduction. And thank you to organizers for having me at the panel. I very much regret not being able to be with you in the room, especially as it's snowing here in Copenhagen, so I'm sure you're in a much more comfortable place right now. As was mentioned in the introduction, I'm a project director in the Global Maritime Forum for the Getting to Zero Coalition. The Getting to Zero Coalition is a partnership between ourselves at the Global Maritime Forum together with the World Economic Forum. And we have more than 200 members from across the maritime value chain, supported by experts, intergovernmental organizations, etc. And we work together to have commercially viable zero-emission vessels operating on deep seas from 2030, supported by the appropriate fuels and infrastructure, and towards full decarbonization by 2050. And my colleague Margi from Gogh from the World Economic Forum is also on the panel today, so she will also be able to add more about the work of the coalition. Can I have the next slide, please? So to achieve the Paris Agreement, obviously the shipping sector needs to decarbonize as well by 2050. And this is something which is increasingly being recognized by industry as well as by policymakers. And the need to actually go for a fuel shift was underlined by the IPCC report earlier this week. So the energy transition is a huge challenge, of course, but we also want to focus on the opportunities, because we see that there's a huge opportunity to produce, export and bunker the new zero-emission fuels, especially then for countries with abundant access to renewable capacities. And what we're seeing, looking at the distribution of renewable energy potential, it's clear that the opportunity to supply the sector will come largely from emerging markets and developing countries, while the demand will initially come from regions like Europe and Asia. You can go to the next slide, please. So shipping decarbonization obviously is important because of the climate mitigation potential, but that's not all that there is to it. So we have seen that there is a range of co-benefits that are very important, and especially to many of the developing countries that hold the potential to produce the fuels. And these are just as important as the mitigation potential. So one is the creation of green jobs. There is the possibility of shipping decarbonization acting as a catalyst for decarbonizing also the land-based economy, and also for future-proofing the economy by shifting to more sustainable modes of production and consumption. We also see that shipping decarbonization comes with the possibility of attracting international funding and investment, and I know that was highlighted in the previous panel. Looking at the very local level, the fuel shift also has the co-benefit of improving air quality, and that comes an improved public health, which is a concern, especially in many port cities. for countries that have the possibility to produce or generate these new fuels, there comes also the benefit of increased energy security and energy independence, which is particularly relevant at this particular time. And there is the potential for energy exports, so generating a whole new stream of income. Can I have the next slide? So in the Getting to Zero coalition, and together with our partners, we have been narrowing in on some of the countries that we see have a really good potential to reaping some of these opportunities. So here you can see a selection of them, but we have also looked at others. But I wanted to highlight a few. So Chile, to begin with, has access to abundant wind and solar energy, and also has an ambitious hydrogen strategy, which supports the development of exports of green hydrogen. And we also see a number of potential synergies with the land-based economy, and that's actually something that is common for these three countries. Many of them have a mining sector, and that's a sector which we see is a particularly promising synergy. And being able to do sector coupling is a way of de-risking the transition and allowing parties to plan for the long term. Looking at South Africa, also has a fantastic renewable energy potential. It's a major trading center and located on busy and important trading routes. Here we see an opportunity, especially related to jobs creation. Job is key to South Africa, and there is also currently a big reliance on coal-based jobs. So being able to develop this new energy potential could actually support the transition to more green jobs. And looking at Indonesia, we also see that that's a country that has the opportunities to decarbonize the domestic fleet and inter-island transport. And we also see that for Indonesia, the importance of providing training that reflects the future demands of seafaring is vital to sustaining this avenue of employment. I think that one thing which is particularly interesting with Indonesia as well, and reflecting on what was said by the previous panelist, is the possibility to develop technologies that are suitable for an island economy, and that's something that could then benefit small island developing states as well. Next slide, please. I know that I am already running out of time. Can I have the next slide, please? So I won't go into this, and I also know that this is something that was extensively discussed in the previous panel. But I really want to highlight reaping these opportunities and the benefits is not something that we do in a vacuum. So there is a need for a supportive policy framework, and obviously the IMO is central, and it needs to set a target for full decarbonization by 2050. And also heard previous speakers to support the adoption a market-based measure and to support a just transition. But there are also a range of policy measures that can be implemented at the regional, bilateral, and national levels. But I will leave it at that at this point, and then perhaps we can come back to it in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. It's great to see all what's happening with the GMF. Now, we have around 18-20 minutes to have a panel discussion here, and in addition to the three speakers, we have Mr. Rafael Segurucia from Director General of Panama Maritime Authority, and also Ms. Margi van Gogh from World Economic Forum. I think she's here. So that's a good panel representing different views here. We have 3-4 questions in mind, but I'm not sure how much we will be able to take. But let me begin with the first question, and I probably go to all the panelists to get a quick view from your side. And the question here is, and also this came actually from the floor, what are some success factors that can be identified in your existing or concluded project, whether it is on technology development or capacity building? What did you see as that contribute to the success, some critical factors. That would be great to know, to share experience. So maybe I can begin with Vivian, a quick view. I know that there was a slide from you. Maybe you can just bring it back again, the points. What contributes success to some of the projects?
In terms of the projects, it's very important to have that international support, really, from the IMO and from the perspective of the Caribbean, having that that funding to be able to start the MTCCs was an incredible investment in the region. As a result of the MTCC, as you would have known, we would have built capacity across 16 maritime administrations, built the awareness, sensitivity, and discussed and tried to overcome the challenges to the implementation of the GHG standards and the adoption of these new standards within the Caribbean region. In terms of the capacity building, we would have also reached over 1,200 participants, both in our virtual and our face-to-face sessions. I think one of the lasting contributions of this project, as well as what we are focusing on in the region, is the need for that green shipping and green maritime agenda, and to ensure that that green maritime agenda is also mainstream across the economies, so that we are moving together where we are not duplicating effort, we are complementing existing initiatives, and we are also not undermining other initiatives by starving them of the resources required to progress the agenda. So one of the first things that we've had to do is actually to make sure that we are aware of what other initiatives that are being pushed by international organizations, ensuring that the regional agendas we're trying to make sure the regional agendas are harmonized. And that's why we're also trying to say that we need to have at the regional level a regional maritime agenda and perhaps a regional maritime center. And that is one of the things that we would like to take to the CARICOM.
Thank you, Vivian, sharing your experience and from your projects that you did. Maybe I should ask Ingrid now, because you have been working on many projects, and what do you think, what constitutes success, or what are those factors in your view?
Yes, thank you. We actually issued a mapping of pilot projects last week, I believe it was, and in which we have collected over 200 projects focusing on zero emission projects by the maritime industry. And first of all, it's really encouraging to see that the number of projects is really increasing, both because there are more projects, but also because we are more aware of more projects. So that's a positive development, and we're also seeing that projects are increasingly global. So in our initial mapping, they were very much focused on sort of Europe and the industrial world, but now we can see many more projects in South America, Asia, and Oceania. So I think that one success factor, similar to the previous speaker, is the existence of government support. So the public-private dimension is something that is really important. I think that the sector coupling is also a success factor. So as I mentioned in my previous remarks, that the project is not only about the shipping sector, but that it actually ties into other sectors of the economy. One thing that I would also like to highlight is the ability to meet national needs and priorities. To make sure that the benefits of a project, and especially when looking at when it goes to scale, is that there are benefits that accrue to the local population, so that there is buy-in and support from the local level as well.
Thank you, Ingrid. Maybe I should now move to Margi from the World Economic Forum. I'm sure you're exposed to a large number of projects around the world, and it would be good to hear from you what you think, what could contribute as success factors for these initiatives. Margi, we can't hear you. Are you on mute? Yeah.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to participate alongside, my colleagues. And as Ingrid said, we work very closely together on establishing the Getting to Zero Coalition. I would suggest that this is one of the great success factors that we've seen, the collaboration that's resulted from 200 plus members engaging in dialogue around how we catalyze not just industry action, but this private public dialogue across the value chain at a global and a local level. And, obviously we were thrilled to see in June last year, the MEPC 76 meeting, where assessing midterm measures for shipping decarbonisation resulted in MBM's or market-based measures being taken into account. And we heard from many speakers this morning how important market-based measures are in playing a central role in the energy transition through increasing regulatory certainty to drive investment and improve competitiveness. I think the focus cannot shift too far away from the public-private need to collaborate to ensure that we move away from this topic of a chicken and egg. The reality is climate change is real. It's with us. There's no chicken and egg in climate change. So the question is, how can, for example, such an international carbon price for shipping be harnessed to enable more level playing fields? We talk about member states being able to use portions of that to develop, country infrastructure, particularly when we recognize, as Dominic was speaking about in the previous session, that we've estimated that more than 80% of decarbonisation investment has to be deployed landside. And to Ingrid's point, we need to ensure that this leads to the creation of sustainable jobs, sustainable opportunities in developing markets. And it's vital that those developing market local contexts are taken into account. And I think what we've seen coming out of the Getting to Zero Coalition conversations, what we are seeing on the global stage is incredibly encouraging when one looks at the types of projects that we are now seeing discussed and the kind of enabling measures and roadmaps that are coming out. One example with colleagues of mine at the World Economic Forum who are working on accelerating green hydrogen initiatives, also engaged with the Getting to Zero Coalition, in collaboration with ARENA, launching a report on enabling measures for green hydrogen that was published in January. So I think there's a myriad, tough to call out one, but I think it really is important to focus on those that will catalyze action and regulatory certainty to avoid this chicken and egg conversation.
Thank you, Margi. Thanks for your perspective from your side. I think I should now go to Rafael, and from a maritime administration point of view, how would you see what contributes success to some of the capacity building initiatives in the developing countries?
Jose, thank you very much. And I will also take the opportunity to say thank you to the MPA for having us here today. Everything is a success today, Jose. You see what we have here after COVID? All the nationalities, all the faces I see here. Well, this is about Panama. This is about the Panama flag. We have ship owners from all over the world with different situations, but we try to accommodate ourselves to provide the platform so everybody could move cargo around the world, which is the main purpose of the maritime business. Back to the session we have today, collaboration, innovation, and capacity building, and having kind of holistic approach, as we used to say at the IMO. Collaboration. If we don't collaborate to each other, we will not, reach to the final goals. Innovation. We are talking about decarbonization, digitalization, paperless in the maritime sector as well, reducing the workload of the crew members on board, training of people, capacity building, knowledge from developing countries to countries in a way to be developed. So at the end of the day, Jose, everything is a success. I am a very optimistic person. I try to see every day on our life, even though we have so many problems in the last 2 years in the maritime sectors, repatriation of people, extension of contracts. We were not able to provide medical care on board vessels, but we're still here. And we accommodate the world, we provide to the world. So everything is a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. Keywords, collaboration, innovation, and it's good to hear that views from one of the largest flags and the head. Bring the reality, what's happening there from a shipping industry perspective.
And before I give you back the word, talking about all the goals and objectives that we want to introduce in terms of the reduction of emissions, I would like to point out that we were part of the declaration at COP26 as a country. So we even though we have our agenda at the IMO, we commit ourselves as a country to reduce by 2050 to zero emissions. Panama is one of the 3 only countries in the world which is carbon zero declared. And we have the green agenda in the Panama Canal. So as a country, as a coastal state, port state control and flag state, we are there. We are trying to provide the platform to the maritime industry today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rafael. And I just want to share from our perspective a few examples what contributed to some of the successes. And for us, whenever we went into a country with a capacity building, we found it much easier if they had some national action plans already in place, some policies already developed, and that made our job so much easier. A few of the countries already have made it, and it's so much easier to move with that. Another success factor that we had in our projects, getting the financial institutions right from the beginning of these discussions and the journey. If the countries start talking about technology projects, pilot projects, and then eventually ending up bankable proposals for banks to invest, it would be much easier if the banks are right from the beginning and advising, what their priorities are, or views are, how they can come in, and that contributes to a significant success for some of the projects, getting the banks right from the beginning. And of course, some of the projects, by bringing the private sector into the action, like the Global Industry Alliance, and they are bringing significant expertise. There's a lot of expertise and know-how out there in the industry. And with some of our capacity building projects, it was really good that the industry was able to bring that expertise and to sometimes even some resources. But more than resources, the expertise was really, really useful that contributed to success. So that's, from the IMO projects that I wanted to share. I think I wish to now move on with the next question, which also came from the floor. How can we do more? How can individual member states, NGOs, industry partners further encourage this capacity building, technology transfer, innovation collaboration? What we can do more is the question. So maybe I should start with Ruan from MTCC Asia, from your views. What more one could do to do technology transfer, capacity building, etc., considering that IMO has a resolution on technology transfer and capacity building?
Thank you very much, Dr. Juice, once again. I think, first of all the MTCCs, all the projects relies on the industrial corporations. So it means that all the research programs, all the projects would welcome the involvement of the industrial peoples. So first of all, I think what we can do is to first of all set up the research programs and to solve the practical needs and the problems in the on the way to the zero carbon the industry. So we set up the research programs. And secondly, we can also do the capacity building jointly. So back to the issues to the capacity building, that the quality of the capacity building programs relies on also the cooperation between the MTCCs, for instance, together with the industrial people. So we should not talk about the theoretical things. We talk about practical things and the practical skills for the trainees, and this is also very important. And so lastly, also it could be a proposal as well. I mean, the involvement of the industry companies or entities. They can, for instance, provide kind of fundings and financial support in different ways. As also we can see that the international maritime funds, things like that, we rely on such kind of funds for this research and also the capacity building programs. So anyway, but again, that international cooperation is very important. In particular, the cooperation between the programs and together with the industry partners. Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Margi, can I ask your views? What more could be done?
I think Wei's comments are, fully supported in terms of both short and long-term practical action being needed. If we consider that member states could potentially align procurement policies with measures targeted towards removing uncertainty, I think we've talked about that. But procurement, very, very important, because government are not just there to set policy. They're large buyers of transport, of infrastructure invested projects, deploying tax dollars into this. How are their procurement principles being aligned to demand for cleaner, greener solutions in the development of that infrastructure? I think this will send the right signal to industry as well to mobilize demand. It's not just about market-based measures. I mean, this procurement lever is an interesting one and really powerful. So fostering green technology transfer requires also, I think, that member states of the IMO work towards, also looking at how can we eliminate tariff and non-tariff barriers so that we can facilitate and encourage trade in green goods and services. A further opportunity is for industry, of course, and industry, I think, has been making great strides with good commitments on voluntary measures where needed. An example is, of course, how we're already working with carriers to look at scaling zero emission fuels to make up 5% at least of international shipping fuels by 2030 through initiatives that the Forum has collaborated with, for example, in this case, the US State Department with the First Movers Coalition. And through that same initiative, cargo owners are also working to ensure that by 2030, they are committing to at least 10% of the volume of their goods being shipped internationally will be moving on vessels powered by green fuels. To meet that target, of course, there is a need for increased collaboration between the member states, increased cohesion in response to the policy measures that are needed in international transport and trade, and industry and partner organizations working together with NGOs to facilitate this. Not to forget, another practical possibility and really important action could come from the port authorities themselves, in collaboration with industry, investing continually in digitization to look at sort of near-term abatement solutions from efficiencies, but also differentiated port fees potentially to drive a view on environmental performance of vessels moving in and out of those ports using low carbon fuels.
Thank you, Margi. Quickly, Ingrid, anything to add on? What more we could do in building capacity, technology transfer?
Yeah, there are really some very good arguments that have been made already, so I don't have so much to add, but I think that what I would like to say is that technology transfer, capacity building is very important, but I also think that there's a need for inclusive innovation, meaning that maybe the technologies that are being developed by those that are sort of front runners in shipping decarbonizations decarbonization aren't necessarily easily adaptable to the context of, for example, small island developing states. So having an inclusive approach to innovation is something that I would like to recommend.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. Since the time is running out, I might actually come back to Rafal. Your views on, from your side, what more one could do?
From the point of view of the flag administration, I think we should come out with clear instructions to the market. I mean, the banks, we hear here during the week that the banks, the ship owners, the stakeholders, you know, they have somehow not clarity on the tunnel. They need the light on the tunnel. So we have to sit at the IMO and we have to agree on something. So the whole industry will move on that direction. We heard that some of the speakers talk about faster introductions of actions. Others, they don't agree entirely with that. But the fact is that we need to do something as fast as possible. And I think that that will be our adding value as a flag state. Provide the proper instructions as the regulators, you know, as a government, as a part of the IMO, so the stakeholders, they move in a proper direction. I think that's the adding value to the whole ecosystem, as they call it here today.
Yeah. Thank you, Rafael. Kind of showing the connection between the need for clarity, need for standards, regulations, or the direction, even for the capacity building and technology transfer efforts, which is a very valid point. And let's hope the discussions in IMO in the coming months will actually get moving in that direction, which I hope it would. I am tempted to actually now, we had a couple of more questions, but I think we're already running short of time. It's so late today, and we need to close as well. So I wish to thank all the panelists for the wonderful contribution to this discussion and your presentations on what you do in different parts of the world in terms of capacity building and technology transfer. And please continue to do so. We need a lot more around the world, and we also need the support of the administrations and countries to also do more, and we look forward to the collaboration. So with that, I wish to thank all the panelists, and before I pass it on to the MC, I wish to thank MBA from IMO side for continuing this Future of Shipping Forum going. It's a fantastic platform, so very, very, very happy to partner with the Singapore MPA, and Lee Hoon and your team did a fantastic job, so thank you very much. So thank you, panelists, once again, and this session is concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jose, and the distinguished panelists.